everyone, my name is Rachel. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm bringing you guys my top 5 books of January. And the first one that I have to mention, this was a no-brainer for me to feature it in this video. This is Manacled by Sen-Lin Yu. This is a Harry Potter / Handmaid's Tale fan fiction, essentially. This is a very long book. It's about 1500 to 1600 pages. It is definitely the commitment. I have had a few people message me about wanting to read this book, but just being intimidated by the size. And let me just say that I highly recommend reading this fan fiction the way that I did, in that I would read about like 100 to 150 pages per day, like right before bed, and I would read other books throughout the rest of the day. And I recommend reading it that way just because I feel like this is the kind of story that you're going to want to spend your time with, and it just doesn't seem as intimidating if you're trying to tackle just like a small part of it per day. But I talked about this book a lot in my mid-January wrap-up, so that's going to be linked up in the cards above if you're curious. But yes, this is a fan fiction that takes place in an alternate universe where Voldemort and the Death Eaters won the war. And let me just say that everyone is dead. Every character that you love from this series except Hermione is dead at the very beginning of this book, because the way that this fan fiction is told, the first part is in the present, so after the war, when this Handmaid's Tale-esque surrogacy program is being formed by Voldemort. Basically, they have found that purebloods are having fertility issues, and so they have started forcing half-blood and mudblood witches to be surrogates for pureblood couples. And Hermione ends up being one of them, and it's, oh my god, like, it's so horrific. I cannot stress that enough, how dark and horrific this fanfiction is. Specifically because these witches that are in the surrogacy program, they have literal manacles that are put on their wrists that take their magic away, and it makes them powerless in more ways than one. And so yes, the first part is about all of that and how Hermione is forced to be Draco Malfoy's surrogate. Then the second part is this huge flashback, because at the very beginning we see that Hermione somehow suppressed a lot of memories from the war, and Voldemort is very interested in what those memories are. And so because Malfoy is a very talented Legilimens, Voldemort is hoping that Malfoy will be able to break through Hermione's mind and get these memories. So then she does remember everything. So the whole middle of this fanfiction is just a huge flashback about the war. And then the last part is back in present day. And oh my goodness, the fact that I finished this fanfiction like 2 weeks ago and I cannot stop thinking about it. Literally every day I find myself thinking about this fanfiction and how phenomenal it was. I think it's very well written. I think that fanfiction gets a bad rap. I think this was just so well done, so well thought out. I love the discussions about war in general and about like how far should you go to win. Yeah. I've already talked about this. I've already talked about this fanfiction like for 15 minutes in that mid-month wrap up. So like I need to just shut up. But if you are at all interested in this, and if you can handle the subject matter, because there are tons and tons of content warnings, I can't recommend it highly enough. I will, if I remember, I'll leave the link down below for the link to the fanfiction on Archive of Our Own. That's the website that I use to access fanfiction. And this has also sparked my obsession with Hermione fanfiction. I'm actually currently in the middle of another one, and I'm loving that one as well. So because of Manacled, basically, I'm going into this Harry Potter fanfiction rabbit hole that I probably will not come out of for a while, and I'm totally okay with that. So the next book that had to be on this list, now this was a hard top 5 for me to narrow down because I read specifically so many amazing historical romances in January, and this was obviously one of them. And this book is just, it's phenomenal. It's After Dark with the Duke by Julie Anne Long. This is book 4 in her Palace of Rogues series. One of the things that is so incredible about this book for me personally is that we have our heroine, Mariana, who is an opera singer. And of course I'm going to connect to a heroine where opera is a big part of her life, as it is for me. And it's also very interesting to see how, you know, in this time period, I believe this takes place around the Regency era. I'm not actually sure because I don't think it's explicitly stated, but definitely around this time, opera singers were deemed to be lower class than people of nobility. And opera singers and actresses and women like that were the kind of women that men would have for mistresses and not for wives. And that's just one of the many interesting things that is explored in this book. And I also just adored this romance between Mariana. Like I said, she's an opera singer who has essentially been brought low because of a duel that was fought over her. And that's something that you don't see discussed very often, is how duels affect the women that they're fought over, if the duel is fought over a woman. But yeah, she has been like cast out by society because of this. And so she has no other place to go but the Grand Palace on the Thames, which is the boarding house that this whole series centers around. Then we have General James Duncan Blackmore, the Duke of Falkirk. He was given his title by the Prince Regent because of serving in the war. And so he comes to stay at the Grand Palace, and he immediately judges Mariana so much for that duel and for the type of woman that she is, and she also judges him right back for just being this cold-hearted duke, seemingly. And it's just beautiful the way this friendship forms between the two of them, because essentially James offers to teach Mariana the Italian language. Because even though she sings in Italian, that doesn't mean that she speaks it fluently. And so this unlikely friendship forms. It's also an age gap romance, because I think he's like 42, something like that, and she's about 25. But that's not really one of the reasons they can't be together, because age gaps were very common back in this time period. It was especially very common for a much older man to marry a younger woman. But really the main thing getting in their way is that she's this scandalous opera singer, and it's beautiful though. It made me cry. I don't know what else to say about this. It was stunning. It was beautiful. Everything that I could have wanted from this premise and from these characters, just so amazing. Next up, we have another historical romance. This is The Perks of Loving a Wallflower by Erica Ridley. I did discuss this book in my end of January wrap-up, so I will link that up in the cards above. This is everything, truly everything that I could have asked for from this found family sapphic historical romance. But essentially we have Tommy, who's one of the Winchesters. The Winchesters are a family that was formed by this Baron Vanderbean. He took in these 6 orphans, so they are not related by blood. None of them are, I don't think. But he took them in as children and he raised them as his own, and now they are like this iconic and quirky family. And basically each of the Winchester siblings have like these really cool talents and gifts. Tommy, who is one of the main characters in this book, she is a master of disguise. She can truly become so many different characters, not only with the costumes, but she's a master at doing like different kinds of makeup, and also she can modulate her voice to become any kind of character that she needs to. And so basically the Winchesters, they just kind of want to take down the patriarchy. They love to go after specifically members of nobility that are doing things that they shouldn't. And so that's kind of what's going on in this book. And then we have Philippa, who is a lady of nobility. She is currently searching for a husband. Tommy has been crushing on her for years. So obviously Tommy cannot court Philippa as herself. She doesn't even know if Philippa would be attracted to someone like her. And so she decides to become the new Baron Vanderbean, because the Baron Vanderbean that took Tommy and her siblings in, he passed away about a year or so ago. And so he pretends to be the new Baron. And so there's a fake dating element involved. And one of the things that I truly appreciated about this book is that pretty early on in the story, Tommy does reveal who she really is to Philippa. And we see that Philippa does have an attraction to Tommy. And it's so good because there's so many things that I love put into one story. The Winchesters themselves, like I said, I just love the found family aspect. They are so entertaining together. I laughed out loud so many times. There's just a lot of hijinks that ensue throughout this story. Tommy is just truly an iconic character. I adore her so much. She kind of seems like she may be non-binary, even though she does go by the pronouns of she and her. You can kind of tell that that's the kind of person that she is throughout the story, just the way that she talks about herself, and I think that that's really cool. And the romance between Tommy and Philippa like just had me smiling the entire time, because yes, there was obviously a lot of angst going on, but there was also a lot of tenderness and passion and sensuality and sweetness. Like, it was just everything that I could have asked for from a sapphic historical romance. So I cannot recommend it highly enough. So good. Then we have Cassie Mint in general, though I do have one novella in particular of hers that I truly loved in January, but I read 4 novellas this past month from her that I gave all of them 5 stars. But I think the one that I'm gonna have to mention in this video is Big Bet. This is one of her big boy romances, or romances that feature a larger hero or plus-sized hero, however you want to refer to him. I still don't know how I want to refer to bigger men. I don't know why that's confusing for me, but it just is. But this one is like the sweetest friends to lovers romance you will ever read. This is a novella, it's just about 60 pages, and somehow in 60 pages, Cassie Mint made me fall in love with this couple and with Aubrey and Will separately. The basic premise is that they both work in a Las Vegas casino. Aubrey is a burlesque dancer and Will is a blackjack dealer. They've been friends for years and they've just been secretly pining for each other, but they both feel that they're unworthy of one another, which that's just one of my favorite tropes ever. I'm just absolutely obsessed. And I was just so enthralled and mesmerized by the way that Cassie Mint wrote their story, and somehow it still manages to be slow burn, even though, like I said, it's about 60 pages. Like, Cassie Mint really makes you work for these two characters getting together and for them getting there happily ever after. It's beautiful. It's everything that you could want. Like, so good. This is one of those stories that reminds me that the friends to lovers trope is just so underrated. Not only in the romance community in general, but in my mind. I always pick like enemies to lovers stories over friends to lovers, but like this trope is amazing too. I don't know what's wrong with me, but I don't read nearly enough friends to lovers stories, and yeah, this was absolutely incredible. I feel like if you're just starting out with Cassie Mint, this would be a really great one to start with. All right, last but certainly not least, we have to talk about Witches Get Stitches by Juliet Cross. This is the 3rd book in her Stay a Spell series. I was so excited about this book because the couple in this is Nico and Violet. Their romance was hinted at all the way back in book 1, which is Wolf Gone Wild. And so I was just very excited to finally get their story, and we finally do, and I have to say that Juliet Cross truly delivers with their story. And I specifically finally read this in January because the audiobook finally came out, I want to say on January 18th, and I pre-ordered that on Audible, and so when that dropped onto my Audible app, I just immediately had to read this. And so this is a paranormal romance series. It takes place in New Orleans, which I just think is so cool because I'm from the New Orleans area. That's where I live. And I love the world that Juliet Cross has created with this series. And so we have Nico, who is a werewolf, and we have Violet, who is one of the Savoy sisters. They are all witches. And this is so good. This is one of those romances where the angst is really having to do with Nico and Violet getting together in the first place. There's just a lot going on between the two of them, but once they get together, the romance is relatively low angst and the drama comes more from a B plot. And I really love those kinds of lower angst romances. So good. Also, I feel like this is the hottest book yet of this series, which is really saying something because Wolf Gone Wild and Don't Hex and Drive are both pretty steamy books. But this romance, man, all the fire emojis, so hot, so intense. Nico might be my favorite hero of the series so far, which is also really saying something because I am obsessed with Mateo and Devraj from the 2 previous books. Also, if you have not listened to the audiobooks for this series, I feel like you are doing a serious disservice to yourself because Aiden Snow in particular, he narrates all of the heroes in these books. His voice is literal perfection. actual perfection for these characters, for this story. Like, I'm obsessed with him and his narration. So freaking good. I am so pumped for the next book. I think that one is called Always Practice Safe Hex. I love the titles for this series, by the way, just so freaking cute. And I'm excited because I believe that one is going to feature a hero who is a Grimm, which is another type of paranormal creature that exists in this world, and they are very interesting. So I'm excited to learn more about those creatures in that next book. And I just need to read more from this author in general because I think she does have a healthy backlist. This just happens to be her most recent series. All right, guys, that's going to be it for my top 5 books of January. I hope that you guys enjoyed seeing me gush about my absolute favorite books from this past month. I would love it if you would leave a comment down below if you want to tell me about some of your absolute favorite books that you read in January. I would also love it if you would leave a like and subscribe. And I thank you so much in advance if you do. And with all of that being said, I will see you guys in the next video. Bye!